Welcome to One Man's Trash, the podcast about collecting everything. I'm your host, Levin Parker, and this is my co host.
Hey, I'm Michael Cortese of Noble Spirit.
And we're talking to a gentleman today that has amassed over 500,000 followers on TikTok, talking about, as you can see, license plates. He's my personal friend and one of my social media mentors, and I'm really excited to introduce Ethan, the license plate guy. Thank you so much for coming on, Ethan.
Very happy to be here and share a little bit about what I got on the wall behind me and what I got in all the boxes around me that you can't see on camera.
I feel that energy. I'm surrounded by boxes of covers myself that I honestly don't even know what to do with half of them. So, um,
That's how it always goes.
yeah. So I guess my first question, you've been doing a series on your TikTok account where you're doing an entire wall of the different states' license plates, but you cut the shape of the state onto them, and we'll put a picture on screen here. But it's so cool. Where did you get that idea?
That idea is certainly not mine. I remember being a kid. I've been interested in license plates since I was 3, 4, 5 years old, and seeing these sort of maps sold at Pottery Barn and Williams Sonoma, high-end places, for
Hmm.
like over $1,000 per map.
Oh,
And
wow.
me and my folks were like, "There's no way." And so I had a poster on my wall of one of the maps, but it was always something I wanted to own.
Hmm.
It was always something I didn't want to pay for. And finally, I thought I'm kind of artsy, crafty. I can do it myself. And there's another creator on TikTok by the name of Justin Davies who is a woodworker
Hmm.
primarily, and he did a state tree map where he
Oh, I
did
saw that.
so
Yeah.
something
Wow.
similar, but making all the states out of the wood of the state's state tree.
Oh, wow.
Um, and I've been following him since I first got started on TikTok, and that was the format of those videos at least was a big inspiration for my series.
Yeah. And it seems like it's really popular. I mean, you get a lot of views on those videos. And I know I have been sucked in by your content. Like when I very first started, I did an interview with Michael on another podcast, and I think I made a statement along the lines of, "Well, if this guy can do 500,000 with license plates, stamps are so much cooler. I can definitely do that." And I have been just blown away at the depth of license plate collecting that I didn't even know that was there over the couple of years that I've watched you because it's so impressive.
And I think you're in the same boat as 95% of my followers. People who follow me are not collectors. License plates are not something they've ever given a second thought to. But then maybe I talk about their state, maybe I talk about something relevant to them, and they think, oh, yeah, that is kind of interesting. And
Hmm.
then I've heard from at least a few people who've gone down that rabbit hole and are now full-blown collectors just like me, who got
Really?
started from my
Wow.
videos, which is always
So
nice to hear.
you said you started at like 3 years old. What brought you into that? Because at 3 years old, you're, not able to drive. So um,
True.
what what interested you in license plates at such a young age?
I, back when I was a little kid, I was always a collector. I was picking
Uh-huh.
up garbage. And I would find a fork in the parking lot at a restaurant. Oh, that's coming home with me. Like
Okay.
I had Hot Wheels, I had fridge magnets, I had minerals, I had you
Mhm.
name it.
Hmm.
But plates, back in the day, late 90s, early 2000s, before we had anything really to do in the car, you looked out the window and oh, there's
Right.
California, Texas, and play the license
Yeah.
plate games on long drives or just driving around the city. Um, I grew up in Arizona where we get a ton of snowbirds in the winter.
Hmm.
So if we had nothing else going on, we would just drive or walk up and down the parking lots at the big malls or at the airport and see all the out-of-state plates. And that's really what got me hooked. And it's all kind of spiraled out of control from there. But I have photos you can put up on screen of me with my mom coming around with a disposable camera, following me around and taking pictures of me as a little kid posing with all these different license plates. And we put together a
That's
scrapbook
incredible.
of probably a
So cool.
thousand photos.
Well, how's the society built around that? How's the social aspect? I watch these shows, they're huge. Are there being an outsider, are there societies, are there these groups of communities that band together and just talk about plates and talk about prices and
Yeah, there are. When I was younger, I was kind of a solo collector. I would buy plates on eBay and I would go to antique stores and I would do whatever and I would build my collection at home. But it really wasn't until, 5-ish years ago, around the start of the pandemic, where
Mhm.
I had nothing going on at home, and I started to look and say, oh, hey, there's a Facebook group for this. Hey, there's an event for this. Hey, there's a club, a newsletter, whatever that I can join.
Hmm.
And in the back of my mind, I always knew that did exist out there, but I didn't realize how much I was missing out on in this hobby without
Right.
the community aspect until I really got started in it.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah.
but for example, there's the Automobile License Plate Collectors Association, with ALPCA, ALPCA, and that's sort of the governing body, quote unquote, of this
Okay.
hobby. Um, and they have several thousand active members at any given time. They put on all the major conventions in the United States. They have a magazine dedicated to plates that they publish for their members. They have archives, they have rosters, they have competitions, and they're just the largest among many international organizations that that do this sort of thing for plates.
And
Hmm.
I was actually shocked. You and I did a piece of content together about a pair of plates that were inauguration plates
Yeah,
for
yeah.
Mike Nixon. And one of the things that astounded me was the value of those plates because it were several $100s. And to me, that's a sign that that is a really well developed and active collector market because that's a mid-century plate. I mean, and I understand that it's limited edition and all that, but that's a significant amount of money for a collectible that was kind of, you can see people hanging on to something like that because it was a really attractive item. And I wonder how big is license plate collecting? I mean, what are the numbers as far as number of collectors, how many dealers, that kind of thing?
Alpca, I would say at any given time has between 3 and 4 thousand active members, and those are for the most part the kind of serious collectors in the US and Canada. Um, but for example, I just came back from Germany from a license plate convention where because Alpca doesn't host events over there, it's more expensive to ship the newsletter over there. They don't have
Hmm.
as big a footprint, but there are just as many collectors. So I would say there are at least 10,000 semi-serious license plate collectors around the world.
Mhm.
Pretty heavily concentrated in North America, Europe, Australia. Um, but there are collectors in South Africa and Dubai and Uruguay and Japan and all over the world. Um, but the hobby's been around. The earliest license plate collectors really only got started in the 40s, early 50s, um, because license plates themselves are also not
Right.
that old in the grand scheme of things.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, it's a pretty healthy market, and it also goes way beyond those inaugural plates. There are antique porcelain license plates that will bring 5 figures every day,
Yeah.
uh, which are out of my budget, but they are out
Yeah.
there.
Well, and I would imagine that it's a lot like stamp collecting, where you have that core group of serious collectors. But every good old boy I knew growing up had 9 license plates tacked up in their garage, and so that even though everybody's not a serious collector, I would imagine that there's literally millions of people that collect plates on one level or another just by saving them and displaying them.
Oh yeah, if you take it down to that level, I would say there's millions of people who have collected a plate, whether it's
Hmm.
the old plate from their car they tack up in the garage or something they find on the side of the road. Um, because I get messages from people pretty frequently saying, "Oh, my grandfather left me some plates," or "Oh, I have these hanging up in my garage. Are they anything special?" Um, People who are not in the hobby deep enough to have even ever heard of Alpka, but they still have a little collection that they're just growing solo when they see a plate.
But you've got what you said, like 500,000 followers on TikTok, and then you mentioned the few thousand that's in Alpca. That, I mean, the your following alone kind of just absolutely dwarfs these massive societies. For collectors, are there any other content creators like yourself uh, focusing on license plates that have this kind of following that are inspiring people or educating people about your hobby?
No, there's no one else that I've really seen who focuses on license plates. There have been a couple small accounts pop up over the years, um, and maybe they have a couple hundred followers at best, but
Hmm.
it's really. in the least uh, full of myself way possible. I'm the
Right.
license plate guy.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So,
in the same way, I follow some guy who collects bricks. I follow a
Mhm.
cheesemonger and a lobster fisherman and all these people who share an insight into a career or a hobby that I never considered. And I think that's what I am for a lot of people too. People who probably mostly won't go out and start collecting license plates, but
Right.
want to hear something interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you attribute your success to there?
It's still kind of puzzling. Like the first video I ever made, if you scroll all the way back to the bottom of my TikTok page, is from about 4 years ago, which I made during a COVID quarantine. Um, and it was just a video talking about how the state of Maine used to, at that time, not have any restrictions on what you could put on a vanity license plate.
Hmm.
And I don't want to just start swearing on your podcast, but the
Right.
most vulgar plates imaginable
Yeah.
are
Interesting.
issued by the state of Maine. So I made a video about that. That was kind of funny. Not very low tech in terms of production. Um, and that first video got over 1 million views, um, and sort of jump started me right away with popularity. And then I made a second video that was also again, started out pretty lighthearted and pretty not serious because at that time I had no plans to continue doing this. I
Hmm.
was I was not ever interested in being an on-camera person professionally or otherwise. Um, but the videos that I would put out occasionally kept doing well, and then soon enough I cracked the 10,000 follower mark, which is what I needed to monetize my videos at
Hmm.
that time. And I thought, okay, well, why not? I had started making not any significant amount of money, but a little bit of petty cash
Mhm.
through the videos. I had started to connect with other people who had plates to sell me or gift to me or trade with me to grow my
Hmm.
collection. And so I stuck with it.
Mhm.
And here I am, 4 years later.
Wow. Wow.
So
It's a
do you deal
huge growth.
professionally? I mean, have you gotten to the point now where you have so many resources that you're dealing plates in addition to collecting?
Oh yeah, and I had been on a small scale buying and selling and trading from before I had TikTok. But now I'm at the point where someone will reach out to me and want to incorporate plates into their wedding theme. So I supply plates
Hmm.
for them. Someone wants to furnish a man cave or a bar, and oh, okay, here's 500 plates that I sell in bulk.
Wow.
Um, this license plate map thing that is becoming quite popular. People have asked me to commission their own plates, their own plate maps. Um, so yeah, it has grown to a place where the monetization is beyond just the TikTok creator fund.
Right. Right. Those license plate maps, I got to figure some of them, if they want to commission something, I'm just thinking specifically for New Hampshire, where I'm from, the Old Man in the Mountain, we used to have the Old Man in the Mountain plates. Once it fell down, I mean, is it kind of hard to get ones that people may say, I want to, New Hampshire shaped map, Old Man in the Mountain themed from when the Old Man in the Mountain was still standing. I mean, would that be kind of hard to go about doing?
No, I mean, so something like that is I'd say plates broadly fall into three categories. There's the plates that are super common, the standard issue stuff
Right.
that's out on the road now, which are even in Hawaii, Alaska, Rhode Island, they're attainable.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
the middle of the road stuff, which is 20 to 50 years old, which is also rarer, but totally doable. It's just a question of money if someone wants to pay to
Okay.
commission that. And then you have the stuff that is so old, so rare, so valuable that if someone approached me to commission a piece with those plates, I would say it either can't be done or it shouldn't
Hmm.
be for the
It
sake of
shouldn't be done. Yeah.
preserving
Yeah.
the plates themselves.
Right. Right. Right.
Hmm. And I think it's interesting because I found the same thing that the more that I do social media content, the more I enjoy my collection. And I think it really forces you to refine what you think you know about things. Because as I go through and research videos, I may have read an article about a certain cover or a stamp, 30 years ago, or not, maybe 20 years ago, but either way, that I think I know exactly what I'm looking at. But as I'm forced to get my facts straight for videos, I really have dialed in a lot of my knowledge base when I'm forced to present it to other folks and put my name behind it. Have you found that's true as well, that it enhances your collecting?
Oh, it absolutely is like the number one catalyst in me learning more. Um, and even, kind of unlike stamps, license plate collecting isn't as, I would say it's not as structured of a hobby.
Mhm.
We don't have catalogs with values. We don't
Hmm.
have as rich of a history of collecting. We don't, I don't know if stamp collecting you would say is at its peak of popularity anymore.
No.
But we don't have even now nearly the same number of stamp collectors that are out there.
Mhm.
Uh,
Right.
and so because of that, there are still gaps in license plate collectors' knowledge. I just came back from 6 weeks in Africa, and as part of that trip, I went down there and I photographed license plates. I observed patterns, numbering formats. I talked to government officials, and I said, "Hey, what's the story with this?" And then I come back and report on that because until recently, no one knows what, someone knows, but not anyone in our hobby knows what kind of license plates senators in Lesotho have been issued in the past 5 years. No one knows how the region coding has changed since they've updated formats, like things that are
Hmm.
pretty minor in the grand scheme of things. But I've been doing videos and run into a brick wall and say, I just don't have an answer for that. If anyone out there in whatever country is watching this video, tell me what's going on in the comments because we all want to know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's interesting because you say it essentially kind of is a hobby in its infancy because it started only just in the 1940s. So stamp collecting, which had been around for so long, had these things that had already been researched. So would you surmise that license plate collecting is a hobby that's currently growing at a rate where in 10 years time you'll have more collectors than you do now, and in 20 years time is it on an upward momentum, whereas stamp collecting, I feel we talk to people, we feel like they keep saying that the golden era was in the 1980s. That was the
Mhm.
peak of the value and everything, and the mood around a lot of the societies are is how do we bring people back into the societies. These are the trajectories for the members and everything like that, but it sounds to me like license plate collecting is just kind of gaining traction.
Yeah, I think I would hope the best is yet to come. I know
Hmm.
that Alpca is it's adding members at the fastest rate it ever has.
Yeah.
The events are consistently getting bigger. I go to conventions and I see young people younger than me, and sometimes it's really little kids who drag their parents along. However they find out about it, maybe it's through me. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I think license plate collecting isn't necessarily past its golden age, but a lot of the diehard collectors are older,
Hmm.
uh, or at least middle-aged, 40s, 50s. Um, and even though there's still plenty of good stuff out there, a lot of the best stuff was picked up when license plate collecting was really in its infancy in the 50s, 60s, 70s even. Um, and it's been held on to and has not become
Right.
available for sale, at least publicly, ever. So it's kind of an uphill battle in that way, where I think Levin in one of your videos, you say there's I don't even know the numbers, but billions of stamps.
Mhm.
Uh, whereas with there's rare, there's common, but with license plates, even with the stuff that has any significant value, there's pretty limited quantities.
Hmm.
Um, so it's just
Well, and as it's maturing, I mean, as the entire market is maturing, and you're starting to get these massive collections that do have serious value. I mean, because if you have somebody that has, 400 plates that are each worth $5,000 to $10,000, I mean, that's a pretty serious chunk of change. And are you finding that at this point you're starting to see more auctions and valuations that are driven by the market? Or do you still have dealers that pick up those gigantic collections and then parcel them out at shows?
you do have that, that there aren't established dealers, but there are guys who have the resources, have the reputation, and are known to sort of be in the know. And unfortunately, it's maybe a little opportunistic. But if there's a longtime collector with all the best stuff, and he's getting up there in years, or it's known that he's sick, something's going to happen to him soon. Um, some collectors will start circling, and everyone will make a move to buy that collection.
Mhm.
It's more rare that it'll just go straight to an auction house and everyone will have a fair shot at it. Um, I can speak for myself. This summer, I have been invited to Chicago, where a big collector has purchased another big collector's collection, and I'm going to go and help identify what's there, figure out rough values, and in exchange for that, he obviously gets first dibs.
Mhm.
They're in his possession. I'll get second dibs, someone else will get third dibs, and 10 dibs later, okay, then it can be offered to the public.
I got you.
Mm.
That's how it goes.
Wow.
So as far as valuation goes, you talked about there not being a specific catalog or itemization anywhere there. How do you value these items? How would someone who inherits a license plate collection value the items that they've collected? I mean, that they've inherited, sorry.
It's pretty subjective, honestly. Um, there have been cases where there was a case recently where a husband, it's usually the husband who collects the license plates, passed away, and he probably had, I'd say, $500,000 worth of plates.
Mm.
And
Wow.
another collector came in and got close with the widow, but said, "Oh, there's nothing special here. I'll give you 10 grand for everything."
Mm.
It sold, and there are unfortunately a few bad actors like that. Um, but once it gets known, it also gets around that they're kind of
Right.
informally blacklisted for a little while.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
but people pay attention to past sales. People check eBay, whose values are always a little inflated. Um, People sort of do what they can to keep tabs on values, but I have had two identical plates sell, say I sell them a year apart. They could go for wildly different prices because the demand is different. One sparks a
Mm.
bidding war. One has a certain letter number combination that's appealing to someone. There's, it's kind of unpredictable.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. And for the most part, or entirely, each one of these plates is unique because they're federally issued. Well, I mean, I guess that in a lot of states they've got to be Paris. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's for the large part, most of these are unique, so it's kind of tough if you're trying to get number combinations or something like that.
They are all unique, and
Yeah.
I personally don't care for the most part about numbers, but there are guys who only collect repeating numbers, triples or quadruples. There
Hmm.
are I'm good friends with a stoner who only collects plates with the number 420 on them. Stuff like that. People want their initials. People want their Alpca membership club number,
Mm.
which is usually 4 or 5 digits these days.
Wow.
So stuff like that is totally random. What plates you have, but if it sparks meaning to one particular person, well, one person is all you need.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I actually saw a thing recently where they had a slabbed card that the last four numbers of the PSA cert were eight, which apparently is a super lucky number in Asian cultures. And
Yep.
somebody paid like $400 for a card that was worth $10, just based off of the numerology. And I know that there are in some countries actually auctions for license plate numbers. And that go for like big money, like millions of dollars. Do you ever see stuff like that come to the market afterwards? Is there that kind of is there kind of resale value in having those plates that have been auctioned for millions of dollars in different countries?
I recall what you said, like in Dubai, they try to buy
Yeah,
the lowest. Yeah.
you buy
The
Hong
Middle
Kong,
East,
I
the Middle East,
think,
that's big. Hong Kong, there's places around the
Yeah.
world. Even in Delaware, there's a big market for that. Those plates pretty rarely come to market because the people who are paying for them are keeping them.
Hmm.
Um, but for the most part, collectors are only interested in, it's always good to have a story behind the plate if you can, but the primary attraction to them is just the piece of metal to hang on the wall as a decoration. And so we don't really trade in registration rights.
Right.
What some emir in Abu Dhabi is paying $10 million for. Yeah,
Hmm.
someone here will pay $1,000 for it, but it's not, at the end of the day, it's just a regular plate with a cool number.
And
It,
you did a piece recently on a plate from Katanga, a little
yeah.
like republic in Congo. And I was watching it, and it reminded me of being a stamp collector, because so much of what attracts younger folks to the hobby is all these disappeared countries and places that no longer exist. And that's a little 3-year country. And I was wondering, how much education is there in the license plate community, where you delve not just into the plates themselves, but what are the political surroundings that cause this to be a 3-year plate, and geographically this is why it's important, because I know that's a huge part of stamp collecting, especially when we do youth in education.
Mm.
And license plate collecting as well, most license plate collectors are in the 99th percentile for geography. They're all history nerds, um, because that ties in so heavily to the hobby. But I have sometimes young collectors approach me, and okay, maybe the new plates don't catch their eye, but maybe one from the Soviet Union does, which is fairly common, or East Germany, something that obviously no longer exists, has some ties to Cold War history, has some air of danger about it as a former enemy, whatever. Uh, Stuff like that is always uh, pretty reliably, you know, will interest non-collectors or new
Mm.
collectors.
And do you get a lot of crossover? Because, as a company, we don't, of course, exclusively sell license plates, but we have sold some license plates in the past. And before the interview, I was checking to see some of our license plates that we've sold, and two of the ones that kind of popped out was the topical collection of Boy Scout license plates with all different kind of Boy Scout symbols, and somebody who had got a vanity plate that just said Scout, stuff like that. They'd all been grouped together, and we sold them as a lot. So do you see a lot of people who collect other areas just in the world that also come into these events or come into license plates looking for just one specific topical collection?
Yeah, I'll see people at these license plate events, which is where the best buying and selling is done.
Hmm.
Uh, and on the one hand, there's people who are not collectors who come into the hobby looking for they drive a German car, so they want a German plate to put on the front. Or they are musicians, so maybe they want a music related plate. But
Right.
on the flip side of that, there's also collectors who specialize in license plates related to some outside topic. I know someone who only collects plates related to horses. I know someone who collects plates from, or not from, but relevant to lighthouses, and they have
Hmm.
a scale model of the lighthouse beside each plate in their display. Um, and there are sort of common subsets of collecting. People collect plates from the year they were born. They focus on their home state, that sort of thing. But
Hmm.
it can get so niche. I recall recently a new collector asking how many mining related plates are out there, and every collector chimed in with, "Oh, Nevada has one, Colorado has one. There's this plate with this on it."
Hmm.
And sure enough, there's a new mining run that this collector started and is
Wow.
adding to. So there are a lot of different subsets and directions you can go with it.
Mm. Mm.
It's funny, because topical stamp collecting is really big, and there's actually a society that has lists by topic, where you could go and look at the mining list, and it would list, hundreds of stamps from all over the country. And do you see, aside from you, do you see there being a development of literature going on with that? I mean, are there magazines? Are there, places that there are places to publish license plate information?
There are places to publish it, and there are databases online that are quite comprehensive, but there's not somewhere like that. In that way, I would say license plate collecting is pretty underdeveloped, where I can't just go and log onto this website and say, what mining related plates are out there?
Mm.
there will be an archive of, say, every license plate ever issued in the United States with a photo, but I have to go through state by state and do my own research and compile that list myself. Uh, it it hasn't been done to the level that it has in stamp collecting. Not yet, at least.
Right.
Still time.
So I like to talk about the collection in or the collector's interest in current media. And I had a hard time finding anything specific about license plate collectors, but there were a couple things that just kind of popped in my mind that were episodes of TV shows that were license plate centric, like that one episode of Seinfeld where Kramer gets the license plate meant for the proctologist.
Of course, classic
Yeah.
episode.
There's do any license plates from movies or TV shows ever find their way into auction houses that are bought by collectors as memorabilia as well?
Yeah, there's it's a pretty significant divide because a lot of collectors don't collect fakes or souvenirs of any type, including, movie props. But
Right.
there's definitely a market for the original plates from Seinfeld or Back to the Future or whatever
Hmm.
media it's relevant in. And there's also been significant interest from collectors in purchasing genuine plates from historical events. Like I
Right.
know um, Bonnie and Clyde's license plates have gone up for auction in the past. The
Mhm.
plates from Kennedy's limo when he was shot in Dallas were auctioned once upon a time. Stuff like
Yeah.
that. The budget is pretty significant, but
Mhm.
collectors really prize that sort of thing as well.
Right. Right. Yeah,
And
that was the other thing that we. Oh, go ahead.
I was
Sorry.
gonna say I have prop license plates from movies, and I'll buy a stack like this for $1 because they're from background shots, they're from shows no one's ever heard of. We
Yeah.
don't know what shows they're from. But if you can find something with provenance, with screen time, then yeah, there's a
Right.
market.
That's interesting that can be tracked and that those items are eventually sold. Screen prop license plate from movies are sold and find their way to the collector market. That's really interesting. But yeah, the historical thing, that's what I was going to say. Well, that was the other thing that we sold. We sold like a 1955 Eisenhower license plate from a motorcade that he had in New Hampshire.
Hmm.
So, they put the license plates on to have the motorcade. They all said Eisenhower. And then at the end of the motorcade, there was this convention. They took all the license plates off and they handed them to the people who were there to see him speak. And eventually one found their way into a collector's hands and he consigned it, sold for like $500. So it
Nice.
was yeah, but that was from 55. Again, not a really old plate, but something that kind of just had New Hampshire. It was white and just said Eisenhower.
And as you start going back, license plates really drop off or shoot up, depending on how you want to look at it, in terms
Hmm.
of how common they are, how valuable they are. Because post World War II is when license plates are findable, and even in some states, especially the Northwest, Ohio, Pennsylvania, um, where car registrations have always been off the charts since the very beginning,
Hmm.
hundreds of thousands of registrations. There's nothing really that rare, from Ohio, Pennsylvania. You can buy a plate issued in 1912 in Pennsylvania in good condition, a couple $100.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Buy a 1912 plate from Mississippi, you're probably looking at $40,000.
Wow.
It's because there's only a few known examples. Um,
Wow.
and that's just that's an extreme example, but it really once you get back to a certain point in history, every year you go back further and further, it gets markedly more difficult to collect year by year
Hmm.
Well, and
and
I,
more expensive.
and I've noticed that as I do the flea market thing and all that, because since watching you, I've started stupidly flipping through the plate bins, just
Yeah.
but I've noticed that there's a lot of the older stuff from Wyoming, at least, say from the 20s and the 30s, where you just know there's not much out there. There's obvious repaints, all over the place. Like there's just a lot of plates that have obviously been touched up. What does that do value wise? Is there a market for the that's okay.
You know, if you have a plate that's like obliterated, like no original paint left, holes in the metal, like that is this close to falling apart in your hands, and it's rare, there could be an argument for restoring it. But even
Mhm.
in rough original condition, it's usually more valuable than a repaint because a lot of repaints as well, if they're not professionally done, which they're usually not, that just takes the value right down.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, that those plates are a good entry level resource for collectors who want the rare stuff, the old stuff, without paying the crazy prices. Um, because you can just buy a repaint or a cheap restoration and have it as a placeholder until you find the real thing or can afford the real thing. But yeah, that those are usually not worth picking up.
Yeah. Hmm. Eh,
So, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, go ahead, Michael.
So you mentioned professionally done. Are there places that you can go to get your license plates professionally restored?
Oh yeah, there's a number of guys who have their own businesses and they will sandblast the plates right down to the
Wow.
metal. They will do spot welding and restore the metal right back to how it originally was. They have professional ink rollers and like they have all the equipment to make the plate the same way that the factory did,
And those are
hundreds.
held at a much higher standard than someone just kind of painting them in, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're still restored, which
Right.
is affects the value negatively usually.
Mhm.
Um, but they're worth displaying. They're not
Yeah.
crude. They're not, they're in the correct colors. They're done with the right techniques. Um,
Mm.
there's been a lot of conversations that I've been party to where at these conventions, which is the best place to go because that's where the most knowledge, all the guys are there. You have the experts right in front of you to ask. People will bring a plate and will say, "Do you think this is restored or do you think this is NOS?" And we all pass it around and say, I don't know. Looks pretty good. If it's a restoration, they did a great job." Um, and so you can get pretty close with professional restorations.
And I know that in the post-history market, like you're as a dealer, it's expected that if something has been altered, that you disclose it when you sell it.
Mhm.
Mm.
There's a lot of good reasons to do that. I mean, like if there's big tears and stuff that's worth money, it's worth sealing those up so they don't tear more. But is that pretty standard among license plate dealers too to disclose faults, or is it kind of just a buyer beware market?
No, it's pretty standard, and if you don't, it's a pretty shady move.
Mm.
Which is to say, there's no uh, universal code of ethics that everybody signs. So you do find bad actors, you do find people getting ripped off. Um, you find fake plates, I'm sure, just like you do in stamp collecting and postal history,
Mhm.
that are just churned out of a factory brand new, that get increasingly realistic. I was passing around a photo to a few friends the other night. We were out for drinks, and I can send it to you guys to put up on screen. But it's a modern graphic license plate from Alabama. Two of them side by side. One is real, and one is fake. If you hold them in your hands, the metal is clearly different. But the fake one looks so good, and I asked my buddies who are not collectors, which one do you think is real? And they had no idea. They were split. Uh,
Mm.
and even if you just see a photo of it online in a listing, at a glance, or more than a glance, it could fool collectors. You really have to know what you're looking for. You're looking at slight differences in the size of the bolt holes. You're looking at the coloring of the expiration stickers, like super detailed things that the average person is going to have no idea what to look for.
Definitely. Hmm.
Mm.
That's so cool. And is there anybody that does expertization? Like if you're going to sell a $10,000 plate, is there somebody who you need to have their signature on it saying, "Yeah, that looks legit to me"?
Um, there's not there's not any one, certifying body or certificates of authentication. Um, but what you do have usually is a lot of experts who are ready to chime in with their expertise and call you on it if something's wrong,
Yeah.
or start opening their wallets if something looks good. Um, I've had people, especially on TikTok, reach out to me to identify plates, to ask about values, and usually it's nothing special. But people have come into my inbox with serious gems
Mhm.
uh,
Hmm.
that generate buzz in the license plate collecting community, because someone will say, "Oh, there's, you know, the nicest known example of a 1911 Minnesota,
Mhm.
which is made of porcelain enamel, like the old signs." Reached out to me, and I reached out to collectors in turn, and I said, "Oh, is this real? What's the value of this?" And people responded, "Hey, this is the nicest example known. Like, can you pass along this guy's number? 20 of us want to buy it."
Yeah.
Uh, and so there are respected names who will give their opinion, but they can't really be graded or appraised or authenticated in that same way.
Mhm.
Well, so these are federally issued plates so that at least the federal government will have um, a record of who these plates were issued to originally.
No.
No?
Well,
Wow.
'cause, at least in the US, plates are issued at the state level, but
Right.
because they're also tied to individual drivers rather than vehicles, once a plate is deregistered, there's no way to really
Check the
have the
original
backstory on it.
registry. Wow.
So
I didn't know that. It's
maybe you could
crazy.
do a FOI request. Maybe there is some avenue in some states, but for example, with Pearl Harbor survivor license plates, which most states, unfortunately, not really anymore, but once upon a time issued to people who were there in 1941. If you have a Pearl Harbor survivor license plate and have provenance of the soldier it was issued to, that
Hmm.
exponentially increases the value. Unfortunately, with 90% of the plates, not only do they not have record of who they were originally issued to, but there's no way to find out either.
Wow.
So do you
Okay.
I wish there was.
do you see a
Yeah.
growing market for plates that have all of those ancillary documents? I mean, like, you could have a registration with the plate number and showing where it came from. I mean, is that something that's gone on in license plate collecting where it's more than just the plates themselves at all?
Yeah, if you have plates, especially old plates, there are examples known from 100 years ago that come with a photo of the plate on the Model T back in the day. Um, Plates with the original registration documents. What can be done, not anymore, and it's also part of the reason why I say it's fully okay to show your license plate on social media, on Craigslist ads. People will cover up on Facebook Marketplace their license plate with their hand or a towel. You don't need to do that. But going back 100 years or more, when it was all done by hand, you can go to libraries or archives and find the original registration books. And if you have, 1918 Wyoming license plate number 41, you can go down to the library in Cheyenne and say, "Oh, look, that was registered to so and so at this address, and he was a doctor and whatever." Um,
Well,
and so a lot of people with old collections do that.
it's stunning how beautiful those early, like, I've actually, since watching you, there's a Wyoming license plate that was issued in the 1920s, I want to say late teens 20s, that's porcelain, and then it has a metal emblem on it in addition
Oh
of
yeah, those are great.
the medallion on it, and it is just a stunning piece of design. And I want to say they go like well over $1,000 in really pristine shape. And to me, I think that that's really, the coolest thing about what you've done for me, at least, is open my eyes to something that I had not considered to be a really serious collecting area. And it really changed the way that I looked at collecting.
And there certainly can be those pieces, and looking all over the world, there are plates. The plate they issued in Panama in 1940 has this beautiful embossed image of a conquistador on it.
Mm.
Uh, every city and municipality in Argentina used to be responsible for kind of their own registrations, and so they would be hand painted with a scene from the
Hmm.
town or a nearby waterfall, or in Tierra del Fuego they had penguins on them, some sort of like they were pieces of art really. Um, a lot of stuff like that has kind of been lost as just time progresses, but yeah, the old stuff is undeniably gorgeous.
I have just one last question, and that is, you're so worldwide. Like, I am shocked when I get into your comment sections how many different languages and countries are represented. Do you think that that is just you and your personal reach, or do you think that's really what the collecting community is? Is it's all over the world because every language you can imagine is in your comment section. I mean, it's really unbelievable.
I think it's a bit of both, and I've also, since I started doing the TikTok, not only have I become more knowledgeable in my collection, but I've also expanded my interest to plates from around the world. Because when I first got started, I only collected what was on the wall behind me. American
Mm,
plates, Canadian plates that were colorful, interesting, all the same size, so they fit together nicely on the wall. Whereas now I've been on a mission to collect a plate from every country in the world and have expanded not only my audience, but my own interest so
mm.
much. Um, and there are definitely collectors out there in far-flung countries, but I think it's also a matter of some people have never seen their little country represented on TikTok before,
Mm.
and people will comment, "Oh my God, this is the first video I've ever seen talking about Eswatini or Bahrain. No one knows what that we exist, and here you are doing a full video on it." Um, and so I think some of that has also not encouraged people to collect, but encouraged people to give my page a second look.
Hmm. Definitely.
I'm happy to have that reach.
Yeah.
It's a little bit detrimental on the monetization side of things because TikTok doesn't pay as much for foreign viewers as it does for American viewers.
Oh,
But on the flip side, it brings great license plates into my collection. It gives me a great network of people when I travel. I find people from all over the world who some, best case scenario, they have plates to give me, but sometimes they'll invite me to dinner in their home, or sometimes they'll show me something that I would have otherwise never had any way to access.
wow.
Um, and so stuff like that has made it so worth it.
How close are
What
you?
happened?
Sorry,
Oh, sorry.
how close are you to one from every country in the world that, and I understand that's a subjective term, but
For just like you countries in the United Nations, I probably have 10 or 15 more to go. But I'm also doing autonomous regions and islands and my whole list that I use to keep track of my world plates is probably 500 jurisdictions long. So there's more to go than that.
Yeah. What happened to that collector who reached out with you, who reached out to you with the finest known copy?
He ended up wanting to keep it, and I respect that.
Nice.
But before I let him go, I was like, "Hey, can you just take some nice photos and document this? Because this is not an insignificant find, and if you ever want to sell it, give me a call."
Terrific.
So we'll see. We'll see what comes of that one day. But
Yeah.
every email I get or every DM I get in my inbox could be the next one like that.
Hmm.
that's so cool. Well, thank you so much for coming to talk to us. I learn something every time I talk to you, Ethan, and I really appreciate you taking the time
Oh,
to
it's my pleasure. I wouldn't be here if I didn't love to share what I do.
right on. Well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. And
Yeah.
everybody, you can find Ethan on go ahead and give you exactly what your handle is on
It's
TikTok.
license plate talk, TOK, like TikTok, but it's that exact same username, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, you name it.